Ready?
Yes.
Okay, today's date is May 19th, 2015 at 10:15 a.m. At the East San Gabriel Valley Japanese Community Center. Okay, can you please tell me your full name?
Okay, my full name is Toshiko Okawa.
Okay, and where were you born?
I was born in, it's known as, I think, South San Gabriel now, but it was Wilmar. Wilmar.
Okay. When were you born?
November the 16th, 1931.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm just a grandma. My working days are through.
What kind of work did you do when you did work?
I worked at East Los Angeles College.
Okay.
In the accounting, bookkeeping.
Bookkeeping?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are the full names of your parents?
Yeah, my father was Masagoro Shimizu, and my mother was Yoshino Shimada.
Where did they, what prefecture did they come from?
Fukushima.
Fukushima?
Uh-huh.
Do you know, can you tell me what did your father do for a living?
I really can't, I really don't remember. I know he had a boarding house at first because he was married previously. And then my mother came as a picture bride. I don't know that much because I was 10, when the war broke out and we went to camp. So I really don't know that much.
Or do you
But
go ahead.
That much I do remember.
Do you remember, well, when your father had the boarding house, do you know where it was? In what city?
In Little Tokyo.
Oh, so it was in Little Tokyo.
Uh-huh.
So when your father came here, he settled first in Little Tokyo or in that kind of area?
I think so. Because there was a picture of him on a motorcycle in Little Tokyo,
Oh, your grandfather?
He was married previously,
He was married previously in this country or
yes,
in Japan?
in here. And that's when he had the boarding house. When I came along, he didn't have any of that, And my mother, actually, she came along.
What year did your mother come? Do you remember? Do you have to know?
I don't know.
Do you happen to know what was the educational background of your father?
Well, I know he could read and write Japanese and speak it, and English also, But my mother, no.
No. Okay.
She was from the era where I don't think they went to school, And so she could speak naturally, Japanese, but she didn't read or write that well. And English is out of the question,
Yeah. So your mother did not work, correct? She just
Oh, no, she was a farmer.
She was a farmer?
Uh-huh. Because my father got sick, and he had tuberculosis. So she had to be the breadwinner.
When they were farming, where were they farming at?
Oh boy. I think around where we lived on Garvelia Street.
So in the San Gabriel Valley?
Uh-huh. In back of Garvey Junior High School. Is it Garvey Junior High School? Or is it?
I don't know.
Have you heard of it? Garvey on, what is it? San Gabriel Boulevard, is it? In Garvey?
That I do not know.
Mm.
But it could be, yeah. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 brothers and 1 sister, and with myself, it made 2 and 2.
2 and 2. Mm-hmm. And then where are you in relation to your brother and sister? Are you the youngest?
Youngest. Yeah, I'm the youngest.
Youngest. Okay. And what kind of things did your brothers and sisters do? What kind of work,
Well,
occupation?
My oldest brother, Kaz Shimizu, I remember when he graduated, I think he just worked in a grocery store in Yosh. I don't know, in camp. I don't know what he did.
And your
He
sisters?
played a lot. He'll tell you. And my sister, I think she was like a PBX operator in Heart Mountain. I remember her saying something like that, you know. And she went to high school there, but I think it was when it wasn't completed yet, the school, you know, they didn't set it up yet and everything, so she graduated, but she, in order to get her diploma and all that, if she wanted to, you know, have a graduation, I think she had to go back. That's why she just received it in the mail. That I remember her saying, you know.
Okay, before camp, what do you remember growing up? You said you were 10 when you went in, but what do you remember up to that point before the war?
Playing. I guess I was the baby in the family, and my father was ill. You know, he had TB, but after that he got well, and he came home, but he couldn't work very hard, so he was more or less the babysitter by the time I went to kindergarten. Well, I didn't go to kindergarten because my parents, they babied me. They thought, no, I didn't have to go. I don't know if any other parents were like that, but because we were the only Japanese in that neighborhood.
If you can think back and step out on the front, go out your front door at that time, what do you see? What do you see?
What do I see?
What do you remember? What do you see out of your front door? What is the view?
There was a road with little houses, but ours was the oldest, I would say, because ours was on stilts, a wooden house on stilts. And I know when my mother went to work, you know, for the Kinoshtas, picking strawberries, and their houses were, I guess it's farm, so it was all wooden, like my in-laws also. It was off the floor, you know. And so in order for ours to be off of the floor, it was on stilts, you know. So we were the only house that I remember on stilts,
Okay.
you know.
So then yours was a neighborhood of like of different houses. There was no farmland.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think our house was on an acre.
Oh, on an acre. Okay.
Uh-huh. And the rest of them, you know, it was the house, one after another.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
yours was like the biggest yard almost in the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
it would be the biggest yard and the oldest home, you know, on stilts,
Mhm.
really.
An
you know.
old farmhouse type
Uh-huh.
of thing. Okay.
And I do remember we lived on an international street, that's what I would call it, because we were the only Japanese in that vicinity even. But on our street, on Garvelia, that's where I was born, we had German, English, Italian, can't think of, and then of course us, Japanese. So we used to call ourselves the International, you know, street, because there was like a couple from England, and they used to live in a small house, and I think they brought one of them brought their sister with them to this country, so it was like a duplex, and the couple lived on one side, and then down the way next door to them, I remember an Italian family, and next door to them was an Italian family. And then across the street was our 1 acre. And then next to us, I can't think of her nationality, but she lived by herself. And it wasn't that big of but it was little acreage where she had apricot trees and things like that. Oh, I can't think of her nationality now. And then next to that was German. They had a house front and back. And then there was, I think that lot belonged to the one on the corner. They were German too, and he was a Reverend Atrops. So like I said, we lived on an international street, you know.
How do you remember everybody getting along pretty good?
At that time, yeah, real good, you know, that I could remember, you know. So when we all went to camp, it was a big thing. Our Italians, they came to, we were sent to Pomona first, you know. So they came to visit us in Pomona. So we had a real good relationship. Even if my mother didn't speak English, you know, with the sign language and everything, they got along. Mm-hmm.
The property that you lived on, did your parents own the house? No. It was a rented property?
I think so, but I'm sure they didn't own it, you know.
Okay. Because when you came back, did you come back to that house after the war?
No. Mm-mm. My brother came back first, and I think he bought, he found, apartment like downtown. Mm-hmm. And I think I lived on Grand Avenue, where what is that place that they have is it the Amundsen Theater and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Is it down there? You know, have you ever been there?
Yes.
You know, in that era, right after the war, it was all big apartments.
You lived in the old on Bunker Hill, what was used to be called Bunker Hill. And it used to be full of old Victorian mansions at that time. So that probably after the war, they had been, well, when they got older, they had converted into apartments and multiple family, you know, those big mansions, homes.
Somebody would sleep on the second floor, or they'd even rent out rooms, you know.
Yeah.
It isn't anything like today.
So you would describe that your neighborhood, everybody got along with each other, as your family being the only Asian, but everybody else was basically a foreigner too, in a sense. So everybody got along pretty good. Okay.
Well, actually, my mother was the only one that didn't speak English. I mean, she was really there. But they all took her underneath her wings, and they made it happen, you know. Like the Italian family across the street, he used to make, I don't know, what do you call it? He had big barrels where he used to make wine, do his own wine, and he would call my mother Mama. Come on, Mama, have a glass of wine, you know. Everything, and then they always want, no, she says, she doesn't drink, she doesn't speak English, but she knew no. And he was real nice. He was a rather large fellow, and he would take her, come on, Mama, you got to have a glass of wine, because they used to make their own wine.
What other memories do you have of the neighborhood before the war with all the different families?
Oh, mine was, that's all I knew. So it was great. I mean, you know, that's why when we went to camp, I had never seen so many Japanese, and I had never been by a black person, you know, because in that neighborhood there wasn't any. I told you what we had, you know, and we all it was a dead-end street, so not me, but because I was too young, you know, but my brothers and my sister, they all used to go out and play ball together, you know.
So before the war, you went to school, right? You had started school. How do you remember your classmates and everything up to that point?
Well, there wasn't that. You know, my classmates and the people that lived around us, they didn't call us Japs, but other people did, you know. And especially after the war, it was really bad then. And so we came out, I think, I came out first, and then my sister, mother, and my brothers. My brother was looking for a place for us, but then our friend, there was two Hagajin ladies that belonged to an all-girl band, and I forgot, they used to live across the street from us too, you know, and probably they were gay, but I didn't even know it. You know, I knew nothing, you know, but they were very nice to, because the Reverend, he had daughters, and I used to play with them, you know, and they used to invite us over, come on over and have lunch or something, you know, so we'd go there. And none of us knew, you know, gay or anything, but when I think of it now, sure enough, you know, one of them was dressed like a man. He wore her hair real short and wore Levi's and black old-fashioned shoes, you know, where they string them up. And the other one was very feminine, you know, wore a dress with the apron, and she's the one. So they built their own house, you know, and the one that was masculine, you know, she's the one that got on the roof and was pounding, doing everything. And the other one was, I guess, the wife, because she had the apron on and she would be doing the cooking and inside the home.
Did you ever have any contact with any of your old neighbors after the war?
Not that many, but especially like the Italian family, and my brother still is in contact with one of them, Johnny Taylor. He went to school with them, you know, and I used to play with his sister, you know. And after the war, I had contact with them, but not that much, you know, because I moved away because my brother found a place for us, so naturally I had to go where there's a home,
right,
you know. And so they all disintegrated. I think the Italian families, well, then they were getting older, so their children all got married and they went, and I don't know where the English family and them, their older couple, I don't know where they went, but after the war, I didn't see them anymore.
Okay. Going back to your parents, do you happen to know why your father came to this country from Japan? Why did he immigrate here?
Gee, I don't know. But I know my mother came as a picture bride, you know. But
did your mother come from the same prefecture, Fukushima?
Fukushima, yeah.
So you don't know how the marriage was arranged. Was it like through the family, or?
I think it was a picture bride. That's what I think my mother told me, you know, that my father, I think she landed in San Francisco or something, and they all had pictures looking for their mate, you know.
So she never knew her husband before she came to this country?
I don't think so.
Even though they came from Fukushima?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Maybe she could have, but I never heard, you know.
So the first time she saw him probably was the first time she ever laid sight on him.
Yeah.
Oh, this is my husband.
You know, that's why it was kind of funny, you know, like us being born in this country and everything. She said, gee, Mom, how can you come so far, you know? And she never turned around and went back. But I know she was married previously too, and I was told that she had 2 children by her first marriage, you know, and that was in Japan. And she told me that I think it was her husband's. I think it was a stepmother. His mother died, and then he remarried, and she was very mean, you know. And so my mother was young yet. I think she got married at 18 or something, you know. So she says that in Japan, if you don't like, you know, how you're treated or whatever, you just have to leave everything. So she left her 2 children, and she went back home.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was told, anyway, by my mother. And so she says that, so to this, I mean, I don't know. I know she had a daughter and a son.
So you've never had
But we never I never had any contact with anybody. So I don't know any of my relatives. I could go walking down the street and it could be my cousin and I wouldn't know it, you know. Because we never went back to, my sister did. She went back to Japan a couple of times, visiting, but she never went to our old hometown. She went as a, what do you call it, vacationer.
Vacation, on a tour.
Yeah,
type of
tourist kind, So she never went to Fukushima and said, oh, I'm going to look up, our heritage and see who's there.
So you don't have any curiosity of knowing who your half siblings are?
That one time I did, In fact, they wrote to after camp. I don't know how they got a hold of my mother's name, and they wrote to her. And then I think they told her, Dad is still living, and he says, come home. Because my father had died long ago. When I was 6, he passed away. So I didn't have a father, and my mother never remarried, So that's the kind of life I had, But I didn't know any different, I didn't know.
So very unusual in a Japanese family in that era that both of your parents were divorced.
I don't know if you call it divorce or just leaving them, because it sounded awfully, strange.
Well, I guess the legal procedures were a little different. So in those days, as you said, all she had to do was just leave everything and go back home, and then they were divorced, considered divorced.
You couldn't make it, and then I guess it was maybe the second marriage was a picture bride. You're coming with the picture, hey, this is who your maid is gonna be,
Well, quite possibly your mother wanted a fresh start and figured the best way to get a fresh start was to go to another country.
Yeah, I give her credit. I don't know if I could do that.
So you said that do you have to know where your father came in through when he came to the United States? You said your mother came through San Francisco. Do you have to know where your father came through? San Francisco or maybe Vancouver or Seattle? Because I think that was the other port of entry.
Maybe if you ask my brother, he would probably know more. I know my oldest brother would know, but he's gone. And my sister, she was real good in that. But Yosh, he might know,
When do you remember your father getting ill? Was he always ill as far as?
As far as I'm concerned, he was always ill.
And so then you were 6 years old when he passed away. And that was from tuberculosis?
I don't know, but I take it partially it was.
What the cause of it?
Because I know he was in a sanitarium for a while, and then I guess he was over the contagious period or something, so he came home to live. So he died at home,
Did your father have any other relatives here when he came?
Not that I know of.
So when your father came, he came here all by himself, as far as you know. When your father came here, do you happen to know where he went to? Was it only just in Los Angeles? A lot of people went to different parts of California first, or after they landed, or when they came to California, they settled maybe the Coachella Valley, Imperial Valley, and they farmed there a little bit, or the Central.
Like my in-laws, they're from Imperial Valley. No, but my father had that boarding house in Little Tokyo. And so the way I look at it, it sounds like his structure was more in Little Tokyo.
Okay, so what you can remember is that probably your father settled in Little Tokyo first. Okay, and maybe nowhere else.
And he had that wife, his first wife, and she died of pneumonia or something.
Oh, so
they didn't have any children.
Okay, so your father did divorce his first wife. His first wife passed away.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you happen to know when your father and his first wife, were they married in Japan and came to this country together, as far as you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought I had heard something like she died of pneumonia or something, but I'm not too sure about that.
So for your family, then, you have your father and your mother have no other relatives in this country.
No, we didn't have any cousins or anything.
Okay.
That's what I kind of missed, especially when you live in a neighborhood like that, It's all Hagujin, and so the holidays, they go and they come. But we didn't have any. No cousins.
Okay.
And ironically, my husband is the same thing. They were ranchers in the Imperial Valley, and in Japan, I think one of the brothers during the war, I think, or after the war, they went to visit him, and they're from Gunma, Ken. But that I know of, our family, no, we didn't go or do anything. If anything, you had to go on your own, like my sister,
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about, because since you were young before the war, as far as racial discrimination, you felt you didn't experience that much of it because you were young and you.
Oh, but after camp.
But after the war.
Yeah, there was a lot. Of course, everybody else has finished school because there's 10 years between my oldest brother and myself, and there's 5 years between my sister and me. I was the youngest, So I was going to Narbonne because they put up trader camps, to bring us from like Heart Mountain or whatever back to the coast.
So when you left camp, let's see, you entered camp when you said you were about 10 years old?
I think I kind of remember,
So when the war ended, when you came back, then you were probably.
I think 14, around there.
Well, 14, and you were starting high school then.
Junior high.
Junior high school. Okay.
Because I think I came out and we went. First it was in Lomita. They had a trailer camp, and then they closed that, and then we went to Burbank. I think where the airport is, they had the trailer camp there.
So what was your family doing after the war? When they came back and they resettled here, where did they go to first? You said your older brother came first to look for a apartment.
And he was staying in, I guess, Little Tokyo, or those, is it boarding house or thing? I don't know. Maybe if his wife, she could probably tell you better than me. But I thought he was living in something like that, and I don't know what kind, but he was working.
But when you came back with your mother and your sister and your other brother?
I came back myself.
Oh, yourself, okay.
First. And my sister and mother came back last.
So you traveled back here from camp by yourself, and you were 14 years old?
Around there, something like that. Because I went to El Segundo, because that's where the two girls, I told you, they were in the band and everything, and they're the ones that told me, oh, come back and start school, so that's what I did, And no sooner I came back and started school, I remember that they sold the house. So then my brother got kind of angry at me. Oh, why did you come out? I'm having a hard time as it is, But me not thinking of those things, at 14, just...
So when you came back and you stayed with the two sisters?
No, I only have one sister.
No. When you
came, yeah,
You stayed with those two sisters?
They weren't sisters, but they were mates,
Or
I guess.
Oh, the
you know.
two, okay.
Uh-huh. And they had moved from Garvalia, where we all lived.
Uh-huh.
They had moved to El Segundo.
Okay.
So I came to El Segundo. They came to the train station to pick me up, and I lived with them. My sister could tell you, but I don't even know. It wasn't very long.
Oh, it wasn't very long? But how long do you think?
Just long enough to get in and cause enough trouble, you know, as far as my brother's concerned. He says, you know, he's naturally, you know, I wasn't thinking a young kid like that, you know. They told me to come out and start school so you won't. Okay, I did. And then they sold the house, so my brother got kind of angry, naturally. And now I could see, you know, he's having a hard time finding a place for us, everybody to relocate, come back. And here I am doing that kind of stuff. But,
So you went to go live with your brother and his wife?
no, I was living in, where should I say? My brother had to find me a place to live. So there was this family, Burgess, that lived in the neighborhood. And I think they had 4 or 5 boys, you know. And anyway, my brother found me, I could stay there, you know. And then I went to, I think you guys don't know, you didn't know, but it's Garvey. I think it's a junior high school now. It's on Jackson. And I think it must be the big street is Garvey Avenue.
Garvey, okay.
Uh-huh.
So how long did you live with that family?
Not very long, you know, just until my brother found. But in the interim, I think they opened that trailer camp,
Okay.
you know, and that's why my sister and mother came from Heart Mountain, and they were in Lomita in the trailer camp. So then I went to live with them.
Okay.
And from then on, that closed, and then they moved it to Burbank. Like I said, so I lived at the trailer camp in Burbank.
So what kind of work then, was your mother then going back into farming when she came back? Was she
No,
working?
She wasn't very well. She was kind of ill, you know.
So how did your family, who supported the family then?
My brother Cause.
Okay, your other brother.
And everybody who worked had to contribute, you know.
Did your brother Cause live with you guys, or did he have his other place?
At first he was living in like boarding houses,
Uh-huh.
and then on Olive Street, you know, those big, like you said, those big houses. Then my other brother, Yosh, was in Sacramento, if I remember correctly. But Cause, my sister, and me, and my mom, the 4 of us, we were living on Olive Street.
Olive Street. And so it was your brother who was supporting the family after
Yeah,
the war.
oh yeah, it was always him. You
Okay.
know. He was the man of the house, you know. And if he were living, he would tell you that, I think they were telling me that when my brother before he passed away, he told all his kids, well, he has, 3 girls and 1 boy, he told his children and his family, hey, I don't want anybody touching that box or something. You know, he had a box with a lock on it, and it was his valuable papers, you know, that he felt was his, you know, and he didn't want anybody fooling with it. And I remember my niece telling me, you know, after he passed away, he said, you know, Dad, we opened up the box and he had got a special permit to drive the car, you know, and all his goodies were in there. That's why he didn't want anybody fooling around with that. Because that was something in those days. You know, he got a special permit so he could drive my mother to do farm work, you know.
Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's a strange, interesting life, you know. Tough life, a real rough life, you know.
Why did he have to have a special permit? Was it because he wasn't old enough to drive?
Yeah, he was too young.
He was
14.
Okay. He was 14 when okay, so that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
He had a special permit, so he was driving at 14, 13 or 14,
Mm-hmm.
and taking your mother to work.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What other, well, going back to the racial discrimination after the war, so
Mhm.
you were living in Burbank. Did you have problems there?
No, not so much in Burbank, but in Lomita.
Lomita, okay.
Uh-huh. You know, 'cause that was more country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is that highway? What is that?
Oh,
5 or whatever.
101?
101 or whatever it is.
Coast Highway goes
Uh-huh.
through that area.
And so we had to, you know, we went to Narbonne
Uh-huh.
High School. It was, because they had junior and high school together, you know. And so we went there first, and no sooner we got enrolled, then they said, oh, they're moving us to Burbank. So we all had to check out and go. But in Lomita, on 101, there was a lot of fingering and a lot of Japs go home. And
Was it, at that time, was it mostly a Caucasian, all Caucasian?
and there was this little white lady, I know when we walked, because the camp was on the other side of her property, and she had a little, what do you call it, house. Well, it's not a house, it's just a little room like this, you know, with a lock. And then she would sell potato chips, you know. Remember? In the old days, they have them hooked and hanging, you know, and then you'd buy ice cream, you know, she'd open it up. And then at first she was so prejudiced that I guess it was 3 o'clock when we were coming home. You should see her. She'd hurry up and grab that stuff and put it inside and close. She didn't want to sell the Japs. She says, Japs, go home, you know, so she closed it. And then after she got smart, she says, gee, I'm losing money closing those windows. You know, look at all the kids, the Japs that are going by here. So she opened it up and she was smiling and happy.
Because she made money.
Yeah, but that's how it was, you know, at first. It was funny. It was funny for us at first, you know, because we were coming home from school, so on purposely everybody would, oh, can you sell me this or that, you know. You know how kids are that age, 14, you know. And it was ironic though. I could just see her to this day, and she's an old white woman with a, you know, bun in the back. But boy, she would come out of there and look at the clock, and she couldn't close those windows fast enough. Those wooden doors, actually, I should say, you know.
You were mentioning that it was camp that was the first time that you saw a lot of Japanese American. So what was your feeling when you first encountered that?
I don't know. It wasn't anything, but where I really felt it is when we were going on the train from Pomona to Wyoming to Heart Mountain, and they had the diner, you know, and this black, what do you call them, with the white coats?
Porter?
Yeah. He came up and put his head right here. Oh, I just practically jumped out of my chair, you know, and he asked me, I remember, water, tea, or milk, you know, and that's the first time I ever had seen a black person, and so close. I could just, to this day, I could just feel the chills running up and down my spine. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. But that's because I never seen anybody but those white people, you know, that we lived with. And you go to school, and I think we're the only Japanese that went to Monterey Vista. Have you heard of Monterey Vista?
No, I haven't.
Aren't you from this? Are you from this area?
I'm from this area.
Uh-huh.
I'm from the Temple City area.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So, what was, during the war in camp, what was your impressions of camp? You were 10 years old, 10, 11, 12, 13. You were spending your preteen ages in camp.
Mm-hmm.
What was your impressions of it?
Well, there was one Mr. Jennings. I just remember something was wrong with his leg. I don't know if it was a wooden leg or what. and what grade he taught. But he was, I don't know what to say if he was prejudiced, but he was very mean because the kids, if they would be out of order, at that time you had those wooden desks with the chair attached, you sit in them like that, and if you saw something, boy, he'd come over there and grab the kids, and bangity, 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 and shake them up, You couldn't do that today, But I do remember that, That's prejudice. And I used to think to myself, gee, how can they hire a prejudiced teacher like that to teach Japanese kids? I mean, that's not right, But after, he changed, But at first he was, I remember his name was Jennings for some reason. And I didn't have him, but I was in the next classroom, and you could hear, boy, he just up and down, shaking the student who he thought was misbehaving.
So, excuse me. So in camp, do you, as a young person, what was your experience? Did you think that, what was camp like for you? Like, were you sad? Were you happy? What was your feeling?
I guess I was too young, really,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't suffer like the older people. It was rough for them, But at that age, I didn't feel it that much. I guess I was happy because I went to school and I had friends,
So at that time, then, in camp, though, you started to develop, then, of course, a lot more Japanese American friends.
Oh, yeah, Oh, it was all, Japanese. Well, of course, until then, I didn't even know what a Japanese looked like, I think when my father passed away, and you know how in the old days, drinking tea and things after the service, that's another thing, gee, I never had been around so many Japanese,
Okay.
And I never have been to a Buddhist service,
Oh, so your parents did not take you to church or temple?
It was too far.
Oh, too far.
Because we lived in the San Gabriel Valley, so you have to come to Los Angeles.
Well, that would be the closest. No, that's true. That would be the closest one.
If you ask my mother, she'll tell you to go down Valley Boulevard. Everything is go down Valley. So we make a joke of that. If we're on Valley or passing it, you go straight down Valley Boulevard.
Did your parents practice any traditions, Japanese traditions, or anything that you could remember?
Oh, you mean like mochi and things like that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And actually, we ate a lot of, I guess you call it okazu. Japanese food was okazu. Rice, we ate rice every day, Because my mother is the cook, and...
So you did things like mochizuki? Did you pound?
Maybe before I was born, they could have, the older one. My brothers and my father and my mother, but I don't remember.
So growing up before the war, you don't remember participating in any festivals or anything, because you didn't see any other Japanese, so you didn't go to any other Japanese festivals or any kind of traditions or anything. Do you know whether or not did your parents practice Girls' Day or Boys' Day?
Oh yeah. I mean, of course, and I don't know, everybody else maybe is rich, but I just remember us as farmers, and we weren't rich by any means, And so, for myself, I could say, I was I had all, like I said, Hagujin. My friends were Hagujin, and so I didn't have any Japanese. And so, Christmas or whatever, they would all go to see their aunts and uncles. And I used to think, gee, I wished I had, some relatives that we could go, visit and things like that. I think that's why as I got older and I got married and I wanted to have children, because I wanted my kids to have family. That's why, cousins and things like that, where they could go. That's why I think it meant a lot to my family and my sister and everybody. So we would celebrate everything, and have everyone over.
Okay, interesting. Thinking now of your house before the war, do you can you picture how big a house was it? It was an old house. You said the oldest on the block.
Mm-hmm.
How many bedrooms was it? Do you remember? How many rooms were there?
I know there was a living room and a dining room, but they're not big.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
that I remember. And there was, I think, 2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms. Okay.
One was a smaller one, and one was a long room where they divided it. They put wood paneling up and made it. Otherwise, it's one big room, and everybody was sleeping in there. Except my father. He slept off of the living room. And then I think my brother Kaz, and I don't know if he slept by himself in the other bedroom. And then the other one, we all slept there. My mother, my sister, and me. Just lined up the cots.
Cot.
Uh-huh.
You slept on cots then, and not beds?
Well, there was some beds, with the long metal posts. But I do remember, I don't know if it was a bed or a cot. To me, it's like a cot because you just push them together.
Okay. Was there a bathroom in the house, or was it?
They put in a bathroom after. It was a wooden toilet outside.
Before?
Uh-huh.
And
then they got indoor plumbing. Uh-huh. And then we had a nihon furo.
Okay.
A big metal thing, And I don't know who made it or who did it, but there was a heater underneath it, and then a big tank, and then they had a hose, a water pipe that comes, and that was my sister's job to always clean that out, put fresh water in and get the water going, and everybody had to use the same water, right?
Right. So was it, did you use it only once a week, or use it every day?
We used to take a bath every day.
Okay.
Uh-huh. But you had to, wash yourself on the outside,
right,
because that's the only water is once.
That's a very traditional Japanese way of doing it, right? Mm-hmm. You wash yourself outside and then you just sit in the tub.
You kind of rinse yourself off, and then next person,
So in the house there was a kitchen?
Yeah, there was a kitchen, very small. But you know what? I don't remember them having running hot water. Cold water, yes, and then we had to I thought it was get pans heated on the stove to wash your dishes and stuff.
More than likely, probably, I guess, yeah, since you didn't have an indoor bathroom until later.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that was fancy, I think. When we got, to us, it was, I know, my sister would say too, we thought, oh boy, we're really living it up now,
Do you, do you identify yourself as Asian American?
Mm-hmm.
Japanese American?
Yeah, I'm Japanese American. 100%.
How do you feel about
Intermarriage?
intermarriage? Yes.
I know, I accept it. My son, he's married to a Mexican, and he doesn't, it's not his children, but he raised her boy and girl, you know. And the son, my grandson, is going to get married in a couple of weeks, and he's 32. And the daughter just got married in June, and she's 27. She's 27, huh? Jessica. And he raised, I think they got married when they were 5. So it's okay. I mean, and then in my in my maiden, my husband's side, he comes from 7 boys, and they had a really mixed, you know. So I think I was kind of used to it, you know. So yeah, I wasn't against it, but a lot of people are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you have no problem with it?
No.
Do your children, grandchildren, do they practice any of the traditional Japanese?
I think Michelle is quite orientated in that way, because her other grandma, she's really Japanese. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, not she's really Japanese, but she's traditionally.
Okay. What are your feelings about the United States from your experience now?
Well, this is all I know, you know, so I don't have any remorse or anything like that.
What is the happiest moment in your life?
I think when I got married and I had my own family. I have 2 boys that I'm proud of. Because we didn't have any cousins, so that was really good stuff for us, you know. Now we could say, you know, that's why even my husband, coming from a family of 7 boys, they got married, but none of them had children except, I think, the 3 oldest. Not the 3 oldest, but Uncle Frank, he had 2, and Uncle Sut, he had 2. And then you have to jump way down to my husband, who is number 5, and we had 2. That's all. The rest of them didn't have any.
What kind of work did your husband do?
He was floor man, floor covering.
Floor covering? Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to add to this interview?
No, it's probably very boring.
No, I think Michelle found it interesting.
Well, she's probably finding out a lot of things, you know, that you don't realize, you know, eras have changed, you know. And like I says, we just hop in the car and drive to Little Tokyo, right? Mm-hmm. Where when we were young, it used to be an all-day job. I mean, you know. Right. And my sister and them, they had to take a bus to school. In fact, she said that we lived 1 block too close, so she had to walk. You know, because they have their cutoffs.
Right.
You know, and they're the ones that they, I think, everybody was going to Alhambra, and then they built Marquepo, so they went at that time. My older brother had already graduated from Alhambra, and Yosh, when he went to camp, he was a senior, so he didn't finish high school. And Auntie, she finished high school in camp in Heart Mountain.
Okay, well, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much.
So that's my my boring life.
No, it's very
People
interesting.
would think.
Everybody's history is very interesting to know.
Yeah,
And
you don't
that's why-
realize what went on before, you know. We're thinking of now the good times. Everything is different. Just jump in the car and you can go and you get this and get that. And before, it wasn't that easy, you know. We had a rough life, you know. Especially my mother, you know. So.
Well, very difficult for her to help, to support the family with a husband who was sick.
Yeah.
And
So
actually,
my brother, he was the main one, you know, my brother Cos.
so you probably had to, let's see, probably if your father died when you were 6, and so your brother was probably 16 or 17?
I think he was, my mother could hardly wait. That's what my sister told me, for my brother Cos, the oldest one, to graduate high school so he could go work.
Go work.
Uh-huh.
Well, at least, you know, your parents wanted everybody wanted to finish high school.
Mhm.
He could have stopped, had forced him to
Oh,
stop
yeah,
and go to
uh-huh.
work at 13 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. The education was very important for them.
Yeah, it is. And that's why to this day, I think, like my brother Yoshi didn't even get a high school diploma because he'd have to go back to school, you know. And once you go to camp and you stop, I don't know, I don't even remember. I know he went out to work in Nebraska and stuff like that where it was real cold. But that was life then.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.